Hello and welcome. My name is Charles Forrester and I'm a Senior Research Analyst, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to this online intelligence briefing. Today I will be presenting alongside Craig Caffrey on Gulf defence markets. This IHS Janes Intelligence Briefing Program will consist of approximately 40 events during 2017 and is available to all customers of Janes Intelligence Centre and Module products, including the Markets Forecasts products. Today we'll be looking to provide an overview on some of the risks and challenges in the region, ranging from politics to defence spending and industrial offset. The webinar is intended as a primer for the region and an update on last year's event. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask during the webinar or drop Craig and I an email afterwards, especially if you're listening on the playback. Also, go through the slides afterwards, and if there's something you want either of us to elaborate on, please do get in touch. Just to highlight, the content from today's presentation has been drawn from a variety of Janes content, but particularly the Janes Defence Industry and Markets product. Quick run through the agenda for today. We'll look at some of the overarching political and security threats to the region, some of the political challenges, and also the key issue over the summer, the Qatari disputes. We'll look at the defence trade balance, economics and budgets, and some of the changes in industry in the region. So, risks, threats and challenges. One of the main issues today regarding regional security and risk is the operations that GCC countries are currently involved in. The operations tempo, particularly for air forces, has seen the countries undertake missions in Syria and Iraq against Islamic State and combined operations against Houthi rebels in Yemen. With these conflicts, there is the risk of conflict overspill, which is a real concern for countries such as Oman and Saudi Arabia in the south, but also in the north from Iraq. For other countries, there's also the risk of being targeted by Islamic State cells, as was seen by the bombing of a Shia mosque in Kuwait in 2015. Iran is also an ongoing security threat for the GCC countries, with a ballistic missile threat and nuclear weapons program still driving strategic thinking for these countries. In addition, Iran has the potential to increase unrest in Shia areas in eastern Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Islamic State has also been a key threat within the region to date, but it is now being pushed back. An updated map is about to be released, but this one from June shows how the group had, according to IHS market analysis, been pushed back from an area, been pushed back to an estimated area of 36,200 square kilometres, which is roughly the size of Belgium or the US state of Maryland. This marks a 60% decline in controlled territory since the first estimates of 90,800 square kilometres in January 2015, and a 40% decline since the start of the year. In a sense, the battle against Islamic State has brought a range of new challenges for both Western and regional militaries. This can be seen through the increased sophistication of IEDs, for example, but also in the use of UAVs in both surveillance and combat roles. In Yemen, unmanned surface vehicles have begun to appear as a threat to shipping, as well as non-state active use of advanced systems like anti-ship missiles and ballistic missiles. So what are some of the political challenges in the region? With succession, that's still remaining a concern. Power transition potentially causes issues internally and externally, as countries may look to decide how they pursue modernisation or development and what these costs may be. Additionally, there would also be a resulting delay as power transitions to a new leader, and that's something that happens with any country really. Kuwait and Saudi Arabia are both ruled by leaders in their 80s, with Kuwait's crown prince also in his 80s. Oman's Sultan Qaboos is 76 and does not appear to have a publicly designated successor.
So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so going through some of the economic and budgetary trends and looking at some procurement trends more specifically as well. So plenty of charts in the next few slides. So starting with economics, we're 3 years on now from the start of the collapse in oil prices. And I think it's certainly true to say that the region is still really adjusting to this new reality of low oil prices. Following that boom period that we saw between 2011 and 2014, where oil prices were above $100 a barrel, we've had a sustained period now of oil at below $60 a barrel, sometimes well below that level. And the key point here is that if you look at that chart on the right there, these depressed prices really represent a new reality for the major energy producers in the Gulf. Things gradually improving, as we can also see here. On the left, we have the fiscal break-even point of each of the Gulf states. So in effect, we're looking here at the effect, the oil price that's required to balance the budget. Basically, the higher the bar is, the greater a country's exposure still is to low oil prices. And the black line in each of the years shows the oil price, or the expected oil price for that year. So keeping those economic and fiscal conditions in mind, let's have a look at more specifically at defence spending. And you can see from the chart there, following that sustained period of growth over the previous decade or so, we saw defence spending fall by around 3% in real terms between 2014 and 2016. And that's really the first cuts that we've seen since 2008. But the other crucial point is that fragile security environment that Charles was describing in the region has really seen defence spending protected, certainly in relative terms. Arguably, spending really, as you can see there, has really plateaued rather than being cut. And even though government budgets are still under a lot of pressure, tentative growth returned this year, and we're expected to see a recovery to pre-oil crash levels probably by 2018, maybe at latest by 2019. Qatar is really the standout country in terms of its attempts to increase capabilities over recent years. And it's really been the procurement cycle in Qatar, and to a lesser extent in Kuwait, that has supported the Gulf defence market since the oil price crashed. Since mid-2014, Qatar has finalised somewhere in the region of $20 billion worth of deals, and as a result, it now looks like the Navy will something like double in size, the Air Force looks like it may well treble in size. So what we've seen is a massive expansion of their military, and one which will require higher levels of defence spending going forward to support it. On to the impact that this spending slowdown had on defence procurement. Hopefully the next couple of slides will shed some light on that. The chart here shows the number of arms sales to Gulf states that the US Congress has been notified of since 2009. And you can see that the shaded grey area between 2014 and 2016, when oil prices were falling, notifications definitely slowed down. Generally, we saw between 15 to 18 requests a year before that collapsed.
We'll now have a look at the regional developments in industry and offsets. So one of the first things to note in the region is that there's been an emergence of defence industrial consolidation, with the two countries with major defence industrial ambitions, the UAE and Saudi, being the main ones involved. In the UAE, the creation of the Emirates Defence Industries Company, or EDIC, was seen as a way to bring together the country's various defence industrial holdings into one single umbrella organisation. One thing that appears to be emerging out of the UAE and Saudi in particular is the rise of, or the potential rise of, the smart buyer. So a shift away from procuring platforms to procuring capability, which includes the TLS package. As a result, there may be increased options to leverage greater work on MRO for domestic industry, which may be a problem for some services firms that focus solely on TLS and logistics. That said, OEM partnering with companies that can offer a lower cost TLS solution may be a way forward. So last slide before the Q&A, the Iranian wildcard. With arms sanctions set to be lifted in 2020, there's the possibility of it opening up as a market. The country has some broad modernisation requirements ranging from aircraft to armour and joint equipment. Combat aviation is a key area of focus, with Russian firms already looking to export there. The country possesses some fairly solid strengths born out of their experiences in the past few decades in areas such as UAVs, rockets and missiles, to name a few. Here are some of the other webinars that we've done recently that touch on some of the issues we've brought up today. Do go back and have a listen if you want to delve into some of these topics that we've explored today, or if you have a particular interest. Plenty more listed on the site. We look forward to welcoming you to future online briefings. Our next online briefing is on airborne communications, integrating platforms into networks, and that's a pretty interesting area, very, very key to market dynamics at the moment. And in a sense, what we've been talking about today. So that's going to be held on the 28th of September. It's got a great lineup and sounds very interesting, and I'll certainly be tuning in. Thank you and goodbye.